In this video we're breaking up the format slightly to cover the history of the Triumph Herald and the Triumph Vitesse, and later in this video we'll be putting the Vitesse through its paces. The 1959 Triumph Herald was unusual for a number of reasons. It boasted Italian styling by Giovanni Michelotti and independent suspension all round, which its rivals the Ford Anglia and Morris Minor definitely did not have. But it also used a separate chassis. I know, shock horror. But standard Triumph, a fairly small company, found itself without a bodybuilder. So the preceding standard 8 and 10, the builder of those bodies have been snapped up by rivals, the likes of Ford and the British Motor Corporation. So Triumph was forced to be clever. With the Herald, it could get separate sections of bodywork, this enormous one-piece bonnet, the rear section, the roof, and bolt them all together to make a complete car. It's a format that worked incredibly well. Separate chassis also meant it was very easy to build the Spitfire sports car. It uses the same sort of backbone chassis without the outriggers. I think the body section is actually structural on these, but great engine access. And from the Spitfire, they were able to develop the GT6, this pretty coupe, which used the 6-cylinder engine from the Vitesse. So let's discuss how the Vitesse came to be. You can always spot a Vitesse by the twin headlamps here, give it a rather sporty look and a hint at the power that lurks beneath. The whole bonnet lifts up to show the 6-cylinder engine. This one has a 2-litre engine, earlier versions were just 1.6. Twin Zenith carburetors on this example. Very easy to access the engine, and yes, this is voiceover, that's why the words are not matching the face, I do apologise. A big advantage of the separate chassis, it was very easy to spin off convertible and even coupe versions. The Herald Coupe was short-lived, but convertibles of Herald and Vitesse proved very popular. Part of the Vitesse specification was a reverse light there, but just looking into the boot, we've got one of these stays that just really helpfully holds it up, and you lift it again and it comes back down. But yeah, a good amount of space. You can squeeze your picnic hamper in. That's the cover for the hood when it's furled down, which we weren't quite brave enough to do at this stage, but we will do later on. Here we are aboard the Vitesse. We'll note we've got a little courtesy lamp just here under the dashboard. If I close the door, it's all a bit clanky, and that was the downside of like this almost component car build structure. Is it's not as robust as a good solid monocoque construction would be. But another advantage was it made it very easy to do completely knockdown kits and sell these all over the world. The standard Gazelle in India was a knockdown kit Triumph Herald. I don't think they went as far as the Vitesse. But yeah, it's really nice in here. There's a lovely steering wheel. Sits quite low. Actually, indicators right. We've got main beam control here. But I think that might be the overdrive control on a car so equipped. Sadly, this is the straight manual. The pedals are ever so offset. So the clutch pedal is actually to the right of the steering column. But that's necessary because there is a big old gearbox here to handle that big engine up front. We've got the wiper control, is a little switch there. We've got switches here for the choke. That's the light switch. And then this one does your main beam. We've got direct the air up or down, depending on your preference. And we've also got a heated rear window, which obviously if this car was a hard top, that would actually work. You don't get a heated rear window with a plastic hood, and then that's your 1-speed heater. But yeah, gear lever falls really nicely to hand there. We've got the door opener there, winding windows, of course, opening quarter lights, and this seems a nicely restored example of the breed. The current owner has only owned this car for 2 months, but yeah, the classic Jaeger dials. With oil pressure in green, because that was the standard at the time, ignition light, main beam warning, and then a rev counter, because obviously this is such a sporty machine. So we better fire her up, really, see how she sounds. That's the ignition on. Check we're in neutral. How nice is that? That classic Lucas starter sound, but is oh so familiar. But the engine noise may not be. Oh, it's quite a sporty noise, so we'll get belted in and we'll get on our way. Right, we'll start the engine again. Oh, it does sound nice. One of the nicest engines ever fitted to a British car in this period, I think. Lovely smooth 6-cylinder burble. The turning circle, insanely good. So I don't have to reverse to turn around, I can just full lock it and around we go. Right, you'll have to excuse first gear in this car. It does sound a little unhappy with life, so we're going to go gently in first. But that's alright, because we're still technically in a 30 limit at this point, I think. So we'll just get ourselves moving into second, which sounds much happier about life, and 60 mile an hour speed limit.
Okay.
And there we go. We're not going to get ridiculous amounts of speed up, even though this is a Mark II Vitesse, which has a vastly improved rear suspension, and it's got slightly wider tyres than it would have had from the factory. I still think a little caution on a damp day doesn't go amiss. And to be honest, who buys one of these cars to thrash about? Well, actually there's quite a lot of people in the Triumph Club who happily would, but most people buy them just to have a car for cruising around in on a sunny day. So that's what we're all about. It just so happens this one makes lovely noises. When the Herald came out, it had swing axle rear suspension. Hark the Herald axles swing, with a transverse leaf. But well, that was kind of okay with the low power outputs the Herald had. When they stuffed the 6-cylinder engine in to make the Vitesse, and also the GT6, the handling could be a little too wayward. The rear wheels could develop alarming angles of positive camber and tuck under, make the car just go completely out of control or even roll. So they came up with the Mark II, which had a completely different rear suspension, more a sort of semi-trailing arm with rubber donut to allow for flex in the drive shafts. Oh, minding my lights on here. It's a little bit dark. But with rack and pinion steering and a very responsive engine, it's a really, really pleasant car to drive. Don't need very much steering wheel input at all. I will say though, I'd hoped for, if overdrive wasn't fitted, they may have fitted a taller rear diff. I know they did that in the Scimitar from Reliant, but this sounds quite busy, so even though we're not going particularly quickly, we're doing over 3,000 revs. Yeah, it is crying out for another gear. Yeah, this is lovely. I'm so glad we got a gap in the weather. I feared we'd have to drive with the roof on. And my camera lady is particularly happy about us driving with the roof off. One story I love about how the styling of the Herald was worked out is that Harry Webster was on holiday in Sorrento with his family and popped in to see Michelotti on his way back from the holiday, and they ended up spending about 9 hours coming up with sketches, binning them, coming up with a new idea, until eventually they came upon what was to become the Herald. At which point Harry Webster returned to the car, which contained his wife and children, who were all asleep in said car. Different times, folks. Oh yeah, it's all the hallmarks of a classic British sports car, really, with that soundtrack. And that was one of the great things about the Vitesse. It sort of brought such sportiness within the hands of the everyday man. They obviously weren't as cheap as the Heralds, but they were still in the realms of affordability. You kind of got that XK120, that big Healy soundtrack for far less money. And the same applies today as well. So while Triumph built, I think, 510,000 Heralds, Vitesses were much rarer, only about 50,000. And in production from 1966 until the end of small chassis production in 1971. I'm going to get told that we haven't done a wiper test. There we go, there's some screen wash. And put the wipers on, and it's a mildly disappointing effort, if I'm really honest. These older wiper blades don't always give a good performance, but a good overlap and no triangle of doom. Yeah, lovely, well-mannered engine. It pulls really cleanly, very smoothly, sounds magnificent, but also, of course, because this car is fairly light and the gearing's so low, you can just potter around at much slower speeds in top gear. It'll happily pull it. But yeah, for what was a very compromised design, really, with the lack of any major bodybuilders, I think this was a very clever solution that has resulted in a very enjoyable car. It is an odd driving position with the pedals so far over there, but it's not uncomfortable actually. Ah, there's our favourite sign. Wow. This feels like a very British way of marking autumn. It's almost the end of October and here we are driving around in a topless car that sounds magnificent. Oh wow, waited way too long for that moment. What a joyous drive. I love how Triumph achieved so much with really so little. Obviously once they got merged into the monster that was British Leyland, they had proper car bodybuilders again for subsequent Triumphs. But yeah, this one really is a triumph over adversity. And I just love, I could listen to that engine all day. I love the 6-cylinder Triumphs. They sound so menacing and beautiful. So huge thanks to the owner for letting me drive this car, which he has only just acquired himself. And thank you for watching. And we shall see you in a future video. Farewell. That's a lot of trotting.